and welcome back. We have been doing the sessions of a lecture series on philosophy of mind. We are continuing today with the new concept on embodied cognition. Whenever we talk about embodied, we have to make a distinction between disembodied, and the notion of disembodied traces back to René Descartes, the 17th century philosopher who is best known for his maxim dubito ergo sum, in other words, I doubt, therefore I am, and in turn it is cogito ergo sum, which is I think, therefore I am. Understanding the Cartesian dualism, we see that René Descartes had given the mind as the priority and making body the backbencher. This led to a split between mind and body, what we address as the Cartesian split. This Cartesian split is also known as disembodied. Disembodied, for the body is negated from the mind. This theory was one of the core components of the 17th century, and it continued to be one of the most significant continuities. In continuity to the disembodied cognition, we are today discussing the embodied cognition. Embodied cognition is a theory in cognitive science and philosophy that suggests our cognitive processes are deeply rooted in the body's interactions with the physical world. Unlike traditional views that treat the mind as separate from the body, embodied cognition posits that our thoughts, emotions, and knowledge are influenced by our sensory and motor systems. The key aspects of embodied cognition, firstly, includes perception and action. This view holds that cognition is shaped by our perception and physical actions. For example, when we think about an object or concept, we may subconsciously simulate the physical experience associated with it, like picturing the weight of a book when we think about lifting it. That is where perception and action vis-a-vis embodied cognition comes through. The second feature is body as a tool for thought. Physical states such as posture or gestures can affect our mental processes. For instance, smiling can boost mood, and research has shown that people holding warm drinks may perceive others as friendlier, linking physical warmth to emotional warmth. And this is where body as a tool for thought under the key aspect of embodied cognition comes up. When we delve further, we see about environment and context. Our surroundings, thirdly, influence how we think and act. The way we interact with the world is shaped by our specific context, social, physical, or cultural. This implies that cognition cannot be fully understood without considering how the body and mind are embedded in and influenced by their environments. And this is why our embodied cognition takes a stand where they confirm that disembodied cognition of Cartesian dualism cannot be the way out. For whenever we are thinking, whenever we are comprehending, whenever we are doubting, we do not engage only with the mind, but along with the mind comes the context. Along with the context comes the environment where we have been influenced, whether socially, physically, or culturally. So all these components together, social environment, physical environment, cultural environment, makes us us, and that is the main component of our embodied cognition. We also have under the point of embodied cognition concepts and language. Embodied cognition suggests that abstract concepts like love or freedom are understood through metaphors grounded in sensory and motor experiences. Example, falling in love is metaphorically linked to physical falling. This is a classic case where again disembodied existence cannot really be the way out. For in our everyday parlance, be it language, be it concepts, be it phrases, be it idioms, we often take the help of body as the tool, and that's how we express such concepts. For as we have just about mentioned, when we talk about falling in love, we talk about the body, the entire mind, body, soul, everything together falling in love. So it isn't the case that only the mind is in love or has fallen in love. So body cannot in any way be negated, and this is where we understand the concept of embodied cognition. So in a sense, embodied cognition challenges the idea of a purely disembodied mind, arguing instead that the body and its experiences play a fundamental role in shaping cognition. This theory has significant implications for the fields such as psychology, artificial intelligence, definitely philosophy of mind, and even education, as it emphasizes learning and thinking through experience and interaction with the environment. Now, our focus would be on this very significant philosopher, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who is known as the beacon of embodied cognition. Merleau-Ponty is largely picked up for he is not only a phenomenologist, but he is the first thinker who talks about the importance of the body. And let us see how. Maurice Merleau-Ponty, a leading phenomenologist, argued that cognition cannot be fully understood without recognizing the body's essential role in shaping perception and experience. His work in Phenomenology of Perception, that was published in 1945, provides key insights into embodied cognition by challenging the traditional separation of mind and body, suggesting that the body is not merely a vessel for consciousness, but an integral component of it. Merleau-Ponty's concerns regarding embodied cognition include the following. Number one, perception as body meditated experience. Merleau-Ponty argued that perception is not just a mental reconstruction of the world, but a bodily, lived experience. For him, the body is not an object, but a lived body that actively engages with and shapes our understanding of the world. This means that we do not just observe the world, we inhabit it through our bodily experiences, and our knowledge of the world is inseparable from these bodily interactions. Merleau-Ponty's stand on rejection of mind-body dualism. Merleau-Ponty was critical of the Cartesian view that separates mind and body. He saw this dualism as overtly simplistic, failing to account for how deeply intertwined our cognitive processes are with our physical form. He proposed instead that body and mind form a unified whole, meaning we cannot fully comprehend thoughts, emotions, or experiences without considering the body's role in them. Intentionality and the body's role. In Merleau-Ponty's view, the body has its own form of intentionality or directedness towards the world. For example, when we reach for an object, The act of reaching is not just a motor response, but an intentional, meaningful action shaped by context and purpose. This challenges the notion that cognition and intention reside solely in the mind, showing that bodily movements and sensations are foundational to intentionality and sense making. Embodied knowledge and skill acquisition. Merleau-Ponty emphasized that many forms of knowledge are learned through bodily practice. Skills like riding a bike or playing an instrument are embodied rather than consciously calculated each time. He argued that cognition is often tacit and habitual, emerging from repeated interactions between body and environment rather than strictly conscious reflection. The intercorporeal dimension. Another concern for Merleau-Ponty was the view that the way our bodies mediate our relationships with others. Through what he called intercorporeality, our understanding of others and the social world is shaped by shared bodily experiences, gestures, and expressions. This view suggests that empathy and social cognition are grounded in our embodied interactions with others rather than abstract reasoning alone. And this is yet another very significant way where he had criticized René Descartes. So he was clear that it isn't just the mind that does all the job, not at all. Along with the mind, we have the intercorporeality. It is just not the corporeal dimension, but the intercorporeal dimension, which is inclusive of our bodily experiences, gestures, expressions that makes us a lived body. So we definitely see and realize that Merleau-Ponty's concerns about the role of the body in cognition laid a philosophical foundation for embodied cognition theories, highlighting that our minds are not isolated from our bodies but profoundly shaped by them. His work underscores the need to consider the body's centrality in experience, challenging theories that view cognition as a purely abstract mental processes divorced from physical and sensory realities. So the question then, what is embodied cognition? We can thus say that embodied cognition, as articulated by philosopher Merleau-Ponty, emphasizes the inseparable nature of the mind and body in the process of perception and cognition. Merleau-Ponty argued that our understanding of the world is fundamentally shaped by our bodily experiences. With these concept of embodied cognition, Merleau-Ponty had definitely targeted and challenged the modern Cartesian dualism and gave a fresh look, a fresh approach to the debate that has been ongoing in the area of philosophy of mind. Going further, we will also see how some of the key concepts of the embodied cognition of late have started developing. So definitely the first key feature when we talk about embodied cognition has to be embodiment. So what is embodiment? Embodiment is cognition that arises not just in the brain but is intricately linked to our bodily sensations and movements. Our physical interactions with the environment inform our thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions. Second is perception. For Merleau-Ponty, perception is an active process not merely passive reception of stimuli. Our bodily position, movement, and sensory experiences all influence how we perceive and experience the world. Intentionality, our bodily experiences allow us to engage with objects and others in the world, making cognition inherently relational and contextual. Interconnection, Merleau-Ponty placed emphasis on the intersubjective experience where understanding is shaped through interactions with others, highlighting the social and relational aspects of cognition. Now, with this backdrop in our mind about embodied cognition, we will try to address the very important notion of the spinal cord epidural stimulation, EES, and paralysis in the context of embodied cognition in this part. We will try to see how the spinal cord epidural stimulation and paralysis has been one of the burning topics in philosophy of mind. In the context of embodied cognition, spinal cord epidural stimulation, EES, and paralysis can be understood through the lens of Merleau-Ponty's ideas. Restoration of embodied experience. EES aims to restore some degree of movement and sensory feedback in individuals with paralysis by delivering electrical stimulation to specific areas of the spinal cord. This can enhance the embodied experience of individuals who have lost the ability to move, thus re-engaging their physical presence in the world. 2. Cognitive and emotional impact. The restoration of movement through EES may not only improve physical capabilities but could also influence cognitive processes and emotional health. By re-establishing a connection with their bodies, individuals may regain a sense of agency, autonomy, and identity that paralysis often diminishes. 3. The mind-body integration. As Merleau-Ponty suggests, cognitions are not isolated in the brain, rather they arise from bodily interactions. EES can be seen as a means to bridge the gap between the mind and body for those with paralysis, providing opportunities for rehabilitation that honor this integration. 4. Practical implications. In therapeutic settings, those using EES can experience a form of embodied cognition as they begin to relearn movement, navigate their environment, and interact with others. This could lead to profound changes in self-perception as individuals reconcile their cognitive and physical realities. By examining spinal cord epidural stimulation and paralysis through the framework of embodied cognition as proposed by Merleau-Ponty, we can appreciate how physical interventions can have far-reaching implications for cognition, identity, and well-being. The connection between mind and body remains central in understanding the lived experiences of those impacted by paralysis and how therapeutic approaches like EES can foster a more holistic recovery. Thus, when we sum up all these notions, we thus find that embodied cognition is a theory in cognitive science that emphasizes the role of the body in shaping the mind. It suggests that cognitive processes are deeply rooted in the body's interactions with the world. Rather than being purely abstract processes, cognition arises from the dynamic interplay between perception, action, and the context in which individuals find themselves. This approach highlights how our physical experiences influence our thoughts, emotions, and understanding. Thus, the spinal cord epidural stimulation that we have been talking about, EES, is a medical intervention that involves the implantation of a device that delivers electrical stimulation to the spinal cord. This technique has been researched and applied to help restore movements in individuals with spinal cord injuries or SCI who experience paralysis. By targeting specific areas of the spinal cord, the stimulation can enhance the communication between the brain and the body, potentially allowing individuals to regain some motor function and improve their quality of life. Now, when we talk about paralysis, please understand that it is no way just a bodily impact. It is an embodied cognition effect, and that is where we are all trying to explain. Had it been the Cartesian way or the Cartesian model, the paralysis attack would have just been considered as a res extensa effect, but definitely not when we are discussing the embodied cognition. So let us now discuss about the concept of paralysis from the embodied cognition perspective. Paralysis is a loss of muscle function in one or more parts of the body, which can result from various causes including spinal cord injuries, strokes, or neurological diseases. It can affect mobility and physical independence, leading to significant challenges for the affected individuals. The degree and nature of paralysis can vary widely depending on the location and severity of the injury or condition. Now, what is the connection of paralysis with embodied cognition? The connection in the context of embodied cognition, the use of spinal cord epidural stimulation, highlights how physical interventions can influence cognitive processes and perceptions of agency, movement, and identity. By restoring some level of movement through EES, researchers and clinicians aim to enhance patients' cognitive and emotional well-being, demonstrating the interconnectedness of body, mind, and environment in recovery and rehabilitation. In modern philosophy and cognitive science, several prominent thinkers and researchers have expanded upon and championed Maurice Merleau-Ponty's views on embodied cognition. Some of the key figures include Sean Gallagher. Gallagher, a philosopher and cognitive scientist, is a leading proponent of embodied and inactive approaches to cognition. His work on the embodied mind emphasizes that the body shapes cognitive processes and challenges traditional views that isolate the mind from the physical world. His book, How the Body Shapes the Mind, explores how bodily experiences fundamentally influence perception, memory, and action. Alva Noe argues that perception is an inactive process emphasizing that cognition arises through active engagement with the environment. In Out of Our Heads, he claims that consciousness is just not in the brain but emerges through interactions with the body and world. Noe builds on Merleau-Ponty's view by showing that perception is a kind of skillful activity involving the whole body rather than passive mental representation. In our next segment, we would be further looking ahead about the philosophers who are the huge votaries of Maurice Merleau-Ponty's embodied cognition. Thank you so much.